While some movies have been great despite having underwhelming villains, a villain is still a vital part of the machine, and so is their villainous scheme. It's crucial to get that evil plan right, but the following film struggled pretty badly in that department. I'm Ewan, you're watching What Culture, and here are 10 more dumbest villain plans in movies. Number 10. Kang Yon-sak. Olympus Has Fallen. Olympus Has Fallen is one of the better Die Hard knockoffs we've gotten post-2000, and one of the key reasons for its success was arguably its antagonists, a brutal and ultra-violent group of North Korean terrorists led by the fearsome Kang Yon-sak, played by Rick Yoon. They planned to extract nuclear codes from President Benjamin Asher, played by Aaron Eckhart, and several of his staff, and then turn the United States into a nuclear wasteland. But not if Jerry Butts has anything to say about it. Now, for the most part, these guys were an effective and intimidating group of villains, but there was one part of their plan that was distractingly illogical. During the initial attack on the White House, which occurs while the South Korean Prime Minister is visiting, the president is taken into a bunker with his staff and he allows the South Koreans to come in too. Unfortunately, he's just locked himself in a bunker with Kang, disguised as a ministerial aide, and several of his allies. It's evident that the terrorist plan hinged on them being let into the bunker, which wasn't very bright considering they shouldn't have been taken down at all, and basing the success of their plan over whether or not the president or his staff would be reckless enough to break protocol in this way was a distractingly foolish move for an otherwise competent group of evildoers.
Really quickly, before we get to this video, I want to talk to you about Hims weight loss treatment plans. You can check out the more in-depth look that we've got at Hims weight loss treatment plans on this video right here. But the gist of it is, Hims is looking to provide you with access to a lifestyle change that is personalized to you, starting as low as $69 per month with a 10-month plan. Thanks again to Hims for sponsoring this video right here today. But if you are interested, then start your assessment now at the link in the description and begin your weight loss journey today.
Number 9. Elliot Carver. Tomorrow Never Dies. Every James Bond film has a villain, and every Bond villain has a plan. Some want money, some want to start World War III, and some just want to stick Anthony Zerbe inside a decompression chamber until his head pops like a balloon. These dastardly schemes have varied not only in premise, but also in quality. But whose scheme is the worst of them all? Well, the dubious honor of the worst Bond villain plan ever arguably goes to Elliot Carver, played by Jonathan Pryce, a deranged media baron modeled on Rupert Murdoch. And full disclosure here, Tomorrow Never Dies is actually my favorite Brosnan Bond, so I can't hate this too much, even if the logic does get a little bit ropey. With the help of a stealth ship and some stolen missiles, he's engineered a conflict between the United Kingdom and China. He aims to use a stolen British missile to destroy the current Chinese government, who will then be replaced by a corrupt military faction allied with Carver. This new government will immediately negotiate a truce with the UK and grant Carver broadcasting rights in China for the next 100 years. Had to throw a little bit of sauce at the end of that to make it seem cooler than it actually is. Now, as a Rupert Murdoch rib, this is pretty fun, but on a pure logic front, and I know it's James Bond, it doesn't really make too much sense. If broadcasting rights in China were really so important to Carver, wouldn't there be a simpler way to do this than starting a potential nuclear war? Furthermore, what if the truce had been rejected? What if Carver's Chinese allies had betrayed him? His plan could have easily started a full-scale nuclear exchange, which would have destroyed Carver's empire altogether. Unless he's trained a bunch of roaches to read, in which case, pretty ingenious plan, Carver. Pretty ingenious. Number 8. Dr. Emma Russell. Godzilla King of the Monsters. 2019's Godzilla King of the Monsters was a disappointing film all around, and this character was perhaps the film's single biggest mistake. Early on in the film, it turns out that Dr. Emma Russell, played by Vera Farmiga, a scientist working with Monarch, is also allied with a group of eco-terrorists who want to release Titans around the world so that they will reclaim the Earth and reverse the effects of climate change. Throughout the film, the released Titans kill thousands of innocent people. Russell eventually realizes that she's made a mistake and sacrifices herself to help stop the rampaging monsters. But it was difficult to believe it had taken her that long to realize what an awful idea releasing the Titans actually was. She should have been able to predict that the Titans would destroy the world, not save it, especially as she lost her own son during the Battle of San Francisco, as depicted in 2014's Godzilla, which is a way better movie. This was a plotline so poorly thought out that not even an actor of Farmiga's substantial talents could make it believable, with Emma Russell remaining one of the most infuriating surprise villains in any recent movie. Number 7. Inferno. Bertrand Zobrist and Sienna Brooks. The Robert Langdon trilogy is surely one of the weirdest and, well, not particularly good film series of the modern era. One of the key reasons for this is how ridiculous they are, and how unaware they seem to be of this. Inferno, the unasked for, belated third installment released in 2016, continued this trend with wholehearted enthusiasm. In this one, unstable billionaire Bertrand Zobrist, played by Ben Foster, has engineered a virus that will wipe out half the world, hoping to solve the problem of overpopulation. He is killed before he can release the virus, and so he entrusts this task to Sienna Brooks, played by Felicity Jones, his girlfriend and the movie's twist villain. Rather than leaving her simple instructions on how to find the weapon, he leaves behind a complicated treasure hunt that she proves unable to solve on her own, meaning she brings in Robert Langdon, Tom Hanks, and various others who ultimately manage to stop her. A thriller that revolves around a treasure hunt linked to Dante's Inferno is a good idea on paper. The trouble is that, much like its two predecessors, Inferno failed to do this treasure hunt in a logical way. As such, an already dreary thriller sank even lower. Looking on the bright side though, at least this one is the last one? Well, fingers crossed. Number 6. Tom Bowen and Zack White. Non-stop. In this Liam Neeson action thriller, Air Marshal Bill Marks, played by Neeson, is taking a red-eye flight from New York to London when he receives a text warning him that a passenger will be killed every 20 minutes unless he sends the perp $150 million. Now, this is a great setup, but while I myself may enjoy this the most out of Liam Neeson's dad movie era, it does have some problems, mainly when it comes to the villain's plan. The villains are revealed to be passengers Tom Bowen, played by Scoot McNairy, and Zack White, portrayed by Nate Parker. Bowen is planning to bring the plane down and frame Marks for it. He lost his father in a devastating real-life terrorist attack and believes that security hasn't been improved enough since, so he's hoping that this would motivate the Federal Air Marshal Service to do some changes. Typical nonsense action movie villain plan, but I can buy it, to a degree. The issue is, Nonstop's villain is just a little too convoluted for its own good. Like, why bother with killing someone every 20 minutes specifically? Why not just keep things simple? It's telling that the film never actually explains many things, such as how the two men were able to sneak around the aircraft and carry out the murders without anyone seeing them. And I know this is peak Magic Xylophone territory, but come on, there's implausibly fun and just plain old implausible. Number 5. Clyde Shelton, Law-Abiding Citizen. In the gnarly revenge thriller Law-Abiding Citizen, engineer and former government assassin Clyde Shelton, Jerry Butts again, seeks revenge not just on his family's killer, but also on the corrupt justice system that gave the killer a light sentence. How he does this is nothing short of crazy. After killing his family's murderer, he hands himself in and kills another inmate so that he'll be placed in solitary confinement. A series of attacks on people involved in the justice system begin, and Clyde seems to be somehow involved. But he's in prison, so how can he be? It eventually turns out that Clyde dug tunnels from solitary confinement to his base, and he's been sneaking out and carrying out the attacks this way. Look, however brilliant an assassin Clyde was meant to be, this plan was just silly. It relied on so many factors that Clyde couldn't have guaranteed. Like, what if he'd been put in a different prison? What if the prison security had actually been competent and discovered the tunnels? In general, Clyde's various killings also stretch suspension of disbelief just a little too far. Most notably, at one point he somehow sneaks a militarized bomb disposal robot into a graveyard and blows a car up without anyone seeing him. Number 4. Lucas Harper, Mindhunters. In the And Then There Were None style mystery Mindhunters, a title one lost plural away from being good, a group of FBI profilers go to an island for a training exercise and start being picked off by one of their own, with the killer eventually turning out to be Lucas, played by Johnny Lee Miller. Rather than killing most of the victims directly, he sets up various traps based on his own profiling of his colleagues, and he leaves clocks around indicating exactly when each murder is going to happen. For example, the first one is aimed at JD, played by Christian Slater. Lucas rationalizes that because JD is a natural leader, he'll be the first one to step forward and press a ringing alarm clock. When JD does this, he sets off a chain reaction that triggers a canister of nitrogen to freeze him to death. But anyone else could have chosen to press the alarm clock. It's hardly a show of leadership. And besides, if JD had stepped even slightly to the side, he would have been fine. None of the other murders are quite that stupid, but they all rely on a never-ending series of coincidences. No matter how clever Lucas was, there's no way he could have predicted the behavior of his own teammates, and the timing of said behaviors too, with such accuracy, and given that this maddeningly stupid plot actually works for most of the film, Mindhunters is a film so ridiculous, it'll have you howling with laughter. It was an interesting idea, but not really well executed. Number 3. Dylan Rhodes, Now You See Me. Now You See Me, a mostly underwhelming heist thriller which revolves around a group of magicians carrying out bank robberies, contains one of the most criticized plot twists in any contemporary movie, and that's more than justified. In the end, it turns out that FBI agent Dylan Rhodes, played by Mark Ruffalo, who was apparently trying to catch the magicians, was actually their leader all along. Rhodes, as it's eventually explained, is the son of a magician who died during a magic trick gone wrong. The robberies are targeting those he blames for his father's death, with Morgan Freeman's character eventually being framed for the heists. This entire plan, like many of the others on this list, hinged on so many things working exactly the right way. This plan depended on Rhodes being assigned to the case in order for him to misdirect the FBI, which is something he had no control over. Another important component was one of his targets, insurance magnate Arthur Tressler, played by Michael Caine, agreeing to sponsor the magicians, but again, this was never guaranteed. The climactic part of the plan depended on the magicians somehow pulling off a beyond ludicrous fake-out death and a safe being hidden by a mirror, which could easily have been spotted had Rhodes' colleagues walked closer to the mirror and seen their reflections. Above all else, surely there was a simpler way of getting revenge? Truly a ridiculous villain plan of the highest order. Number 2. Adrian Price, Oldboy 2013. 2003's South Korean masterpiece Oldboy features one of the twisted, most deranged revenge schemes ever seen in a movie. The antagonist locks the main character up for 15 years and then tricks him into committing incest with his daughter. It's far-fetched, no doubt about it, but it also feels believable thanks to the film's careful plotting. Unfortunately, the film's regrettable American remake totally bungled this extraordinary story. The thing is, the original film's villain used hypnosis to ensure that protagonist Oh Dae-sao and his daughter would meet and fall in love. In stark contrast, the American film's villain, Adrian Price, played by a career worst Sharlto Copley, left everything to chance. There was no hypnosis, and after their initial meeting, Joe, played by Josh Brolin, and his daughter Marie, played by Elizabeth Olsen, wouldn't have even met again had Joe's friend Chucky, played by Michael Imperioli, not seen Maria's card in Joe's pocket and phoned her. That in itself was wildly coincidental at best, and there was absolutely no guarantee that the pair would fall in love either. Given that Adrian dedicated over 20 years of his life to this horrendous revenge scheme, You'd have thought he'd be a little more thorough, right? And number 1, Father Patrick McKenna, Angels and Demons. In Angels and Demons, the predecessor to the aforementioned Inferno, Father Patrick McKenna, played by Ewan McGregor, the Carmelenjo to the late Pope, has secretly poisoned his master because he believed he was too open to science. He wants to become the Pope and lead the church away from science, so he fakes a terrorist attack by the Illuminati, which involves a canister of antimatter being set to destroy the city and getting an assassin to kill the 4 likely successors. Once the antimatter is found by Robert Langdon, McKenna pilots the canister up in a helicopter and then parachutes down while it explodes far above. He hopes this heroic act will get him elected as Pope. Right, so this movie might be the most entertaining of the Langdon trilogy, but this scheme remains ridiculous beyond measure. The most common trends on this list have been an over-reliance on coincidences and unnecessarily convoluted schemes. This plot dials both these issues up to 11. McKenna's scheme relied on the antimatter being found, so why lay out a complicated treasure hunt and make it so difficult to retrieve? What was he going to do if Langdon hadn't been there? Furthermore, regardless of his heroism, there was no guarantee that the Cardinals would break thousands of years of tradition and elect some young priest as Pope. It would take ages to list all the things that could have gone wrong here, and this is a contender for the silliest evil plan ever committed to film.